All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Under the Dome. I'm your host, Alan Ulrich, here with my partner, Sean Williams, on this rainy, windy night in New Orleans. I had like big tree limbs and stuff in my yard. That wind's blowing some serious stuff out there.
It's starting to pick up a little bit here as well. I see the lights outdoors. They're starting to swing and sway a little bit.
Wow. So, all right. So, the big news this week, which of course there is no real Saints news, they haven't signed anybody, they haven't brought anybody in. And usually this happens this time of year. We're 2 weeks before the draft. They're almost exclusively focused on drafting right now. So the only news that came out this week is some movie studio is going to make a movie about Sean Payton's 2012 season when he coached his sixth grade son. And you and I were talking a little bit about this off the air. You asked me if it's a comedy because they cast Kevin James, the King of Queens, mall cop, and those, that kind of actor as Sean Payton. And Payton has never let. I could see him playing Rob Ryan, but I
Yeah,
see him playing Sean Payton. So
that's like getting Cam Jordan to play Brandon Cooks.
yeah. So I mean, it's just one of those things that it's a curious casting choice, but I'm guessing this is supposed to be a serious film about that year and what he did. Now, NFL Films did a short feature, about a 5-minute feature on Peyton, what he did that year, and it's all about him coaching his son's sixth grade, Connor Peyton, coaching Connor's sixth grade football team. And this is probably one step above Pop Warner. These kids
Junior high.
yeah, these kids are now 11, 12 years old. So they were talking about Sean Payton, and this is what I told you. I ended up coaching my kids in sports, all three of my kids in sports. And I was never that dad who could just sit in the stands and not say anything or not do anything. We talk about, Alice and I joke about this all the time, but the car ride home, instant analysis about what you did out there on the car ride home. And that's kind of how I was in the stands. I'm watching this going, oh my God, why are you running this play? Oh my God, somebody needs to do something here. So, I ended up being a volunteer dad that would coach. And one year, I want to say this was when my son was 9, maybe 8. We were a playground, Little Farms Playground. And I ended up being the offensive coordinator for this team, just kind of like Sean Payton. My plays were as basic as you can be because you're dealing with 8, 9, and 10-year-old kids, and you try and make it any more complicated than a basic numbering system. And I'd hold the pick. You could bring the playbook in the huddle with you. Coach could stand in the huddle with him. And I sat there with the quarters and drew the circles and put the X's for the defense. And I numbered the holes. It's been a long time since I've done this, but I think the right was even and the left was odd. Okay. Yep. So, the 0 is where the center is, and you had 2, 4, 6, and 8 was outside the tackle, and 1, 3, 5, 7. Yeah, I think that's how I had it. Was 7 was outside the tackle. And then I numbered the backs. Quarterback was 1, fullback was 2, running back was 3, and our receiver / tight end was 4. So if we ran a 32, the three back. I mean the three back goes to the two hole. That's basically how I had to teach it. And the fullback, his job always, and there was always not the power I formation, but an offset. The fullback's offset to whatever side we're running. The fullback goes to the hole first. The guard, if there's the two holes, the guard and the center, they split. One pushes the guy this way, one pushes the guy this way. The fullback comes to the hole. He hits the linebacker, usually the middle linebacker. He hits the middle linebacker, and the running back bounces to the opposite way the fullback is blocking. And that was a running play. That was a basic running play. And I had it all drawn out every time where people were supposed to be. Who was blocking who? If the play wasn't coming behind you, you just block the guy in front of you. You just push him in front of you. That's all you got to do. That's as basic as I could be. All of our plays work that way. My fast back always ran to the outside because I always ran to the wide side for the big plays. And once I got the defense spread out a little bit, then I start hitting the inside plays. Okay. And that's just how we played. That's all we did. Peyton, with his sixth grade team, says, okay, we got to have a playbook. I'm going to come up with plays. That was my playbook. Sean Payton is running the West Coast offense playbook. He's running, why spider banana, and the kids were laughing because they're like, what happened to sweep left, sweep right? What happened to all those plays? No, we're running, the kind of plays that you hear Sean Payton on NFL films calling this to Drew. And again, NFL films talked about this. They said, okay, when you play these kind of games, once you get up by a certain amount of points, you cut the scoreboard off. So they went from never having the scoreboard cut off to scoreboard getting cut off in the third quarter, scoreboard getting cut off at halftime, scoreboard getting cut off in the first quarter. They're beating teams that badly until they get to this one team that was running, and you pointed it out, the Notre Dame box. They're running a version of the single wing where you essentially have four running backs in the backfield, and the guy who's playing quarterback, who's one of the running backs, is spinning his back, handing the ball off this way, handing the ball off that way, and all these guys are running through all the gaps. So, your defense is like, where's the ball? Where's the ball? You're playing, it's like, find the queen, where's the queen? Where's the queen with the shell? And that's exactly what they were doing in this team. And then they had the scoreboard cut off on them. So it's going to be fun to see how they do this film, because Peyton went and called Bill Parcells. He says, man, I can't figure out how to stop this team. We're going to play these guys again. You got to tell me, how do you stop the Notre Dame box offense? So that's what I'm looking forward to seeing in this film. I don't get why.
Well, I'm glad that they're actually paying some attention to our folks again. Finally.
Mm-hmm. They are. And one of my friends posted, speaking of not paying attention to our team, Julian Edelman retired, announced his retirement. He got waived by the Patriots, failed physical. And instantly, Twitterverse and the talking heads like, is Julian Edelman a Hall of Fame NFL receiver? And, of course, they showed the play he made against Atlanta in a Super Bowl, the miracle catch. And one of my friends pointed out, and then somebody else said he's the best seventh-round pick in the history of the NFL. And one of our friends pointed out and said, Marcus Colston, man. Look at Marcus Colston's stats compared to Julian Edelman. Yeah, Edelman went to a bunch of Super Bowls because he was on a loaded team. Look at what Colston did, and not even close to the kind of player he was. Of course, Edelman was a slot receiver, and Colston was a starter on the outside. But again, you're not paying attention to these things. So it's typical Saint slander, I said. And since I think Donald brought it up, Quan Alexander, that's why his picture's on the cover tonight for the show. Quan Alexander, they showed him working out. He's with a strength coach trying to increase his strength on his Achilles. It has been obviously surgically repaired. He's probably going to be ready for training camp. But what Sheldon Rankin said after his injury, it was hard for him to push off in the beginning. It took a while for that to come back. And I think that's the point of this strength and conditioning coach, trying to strengthen his Achilles tendon, give him his burst, his speed.
Yeah.
So I'm really curious.
It's hard. It's hard after I never tore an Achilles, but I completely blew out my knee and rehabbed that. It's really hard to reach the point where you can let go and trust in that rebuilt or rehabbed
Absolutely.
thing.
Absolutely. And I think that's why the Saints haven't been that anxious to re-sign him. They don't need to re-sign him. They're staying in touch with his rehab, see how this goes, and see when he's ready. You don't need to put him on the roster right now because it's unlikely he's going to sign with anybody. The video footage had him in Saint shorts working out. So we'll see how this goes. But that brings us really to what tonight's episode's about. The needs this team has going into the draft. And this is one of the few years I can honestly say that there are some glaring holes on this team that have not been filled by anybody. That now makes the draft, instead of picking the best available player, you kind of have to go in this thing and saying, okay, they need this position. They need a guy in this position. You know, you can't sit there and say, okay, well, if we don't draft this guy or this position because of the way the draft board has fallen, and we end up drafting guys that we have extra players in or have good depth in, say an offensive tackle or a guard or something like that, or a center, you really are like almost wasted a draft pick because you still have that hole. Who do you think is the biggest, or what position do you think is the biggest need area on this team right now?
I think you could argue the point that you have got to get Demario Davis some help in the middle.
Yeah.
Plus, you're not bringing Anzalone back. So no, I think that
he signed with somebody else. So, yeah.
I think that it's arguable that could be the most glaring need on the team. I know we need wide receiver. I know that we probably need a cornerback. But to me, I think that that linebacker position is the most glaring need of the whole team.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think middle linebacker, well, since they only play two linebackers, without Quan Alexander, you really need somebody as that second linebacker because you've got Zach Baldwin, a pick from last year, and you have Caden Ellis, and that's really the only people who've had any kind of starting experience or NFL level experience in your defense, because Craig Robertson hasn't been re-signed yet either. So yeah, I would agree with that. I would also agree that you really need a second corner, outside corner, because right now your outside corners are Patrick Robertson and your favorite player, PJ Williams. So, you know, it's I think those two positions are probably your top positions. Then right after those two, you have no run stuffing defensive tackle.
Yeah.
Because Malcolm Brown's gone.
Yeah.
You don't have I mean, excuse me, you've got Malcolm Roach and Shy Tuttle, but those guys are more rotational players. I think defensive end, you're probably in a little bit of a better shape because we brought in a guy, the Kansas City defensive end we
Yeah.
talked about last week. Carl Ganderson seems to be trying to take that next step forward. And you do have two starters. You've got Cam Jordan and you've got Marcus Davenport, and both of them have question marks. Davenport, can he stay healthy and have that breakout year we've all been waiting for? And Cam Jordan, was last year an aberration, or is he on a decline? Is that the first sign he's on a decline?
Yeah.
So, I think those four positions are probably your biggest holes and receiver on offense.
with the year that Trey Hendrickson had, I don't want to say this the wrong way. The slow, less productive season that that Cam Jordan had wasn't as noticeable. But when you start looking at individual statistics, you see that last year wasn't nearly the level that he's been playing at. And
No,
I don't know if I don't really know if that's a scheming thing or if that's on him or.
Well, the disturbing thing was how Cam Jordan was mostly. I mean, people like to say, okay, he was being triple teamed or double teamed a lot, but there were games.
That's nothing new, though.
But there were games where he wasn't being triple teamed or double teamed, where he was facing a third string tackle. I think about that Buccaneers game where he was really facing one-on-one blocking, and he was not getting any pressure on the outside. He wasn't really rushing any passes. Hendrickson did only play 53% of defensive snaps. He mostly played in pass situations, which helped him get as many sacks as he did. I felt there was a game, that Eagles game, where Hendrickson had to play the majority of the snaps as a defensive end. I thought he really got exposed. And I thought his run stuffing ability, or run stopping ability, was really exposed in that Eagles game. He consistently failed to contain the edge, make that quarterback cut back to where the rest of the defense was in the inside, where guys like Demario Davis, and I think Quan wasn't hurt yet. Maybe he was, but where Quan Alexander would be waiting for him. And he didn't do it. No, I think Quan did play that game. I don't think he was hurt yet. But, that was very frustrating. Very, very frustrating because he just kept going inside, and he'd leave that outside wide open. And he kind of negated Demario Davis because he kept trying to go to the inside to shoot the gap between the tackle and the guard so he could get right to the quarterback, and all Hurts would do is bounce to the outside. So it's misleading. That's probably the best way I can put Hendrickson's season. He got a lot of sacks, got a lot of pressures, but he did that on passing downs. And I think some team, whoever paid him, I forgot who paid him, but if they paid him Cincinnati, okay.
Yeah.
They paid him to be a 3-down defensive end, they're going to have some problems.
Yeah, I agree. And my boss is the diehardest of diehard Cincinnati Bengal fans. And he asked me about him, and I told him, I said, if you use him in the right way, he can be a star for you. But
yeah, I remember that play.
I shudder to think how well it's going to work out for him to be a 3-down player.
They're going to find out he's a specialty player, and it is what it is. The question is now, where do those sacks come from? And, I saw, Donald, you said that you think that we can go offense in the second, in day 3, 4th, 5th, 6th round. I am not so sure because I think there's a huge drop off at receiver after Michael Thomas, and you kind of need a guy to stretch the field. And I don't think that I just forgot his name now, the kick returner. Number 11. And somebody will flash his name up on me. But I don't think, as good as he is, I think his size hurts him as far as being an every down NFL receiver. I think you really need to get an impact receiver early. Deontay Harris. Thank you. Deontay Harris. Because, in that Tampa game where Harris was in the game, they had no answer for him. I really thought Harris was going to win that game. He was kind of having that Taysom Hill versus the Vikings kind of playoff game right there. If Harris would have stayed healthy that whole game, I think it's a very different ball game. But he got hurt. And once he got hurt, the offense completely changed. They lost all that speed. And I think that's what they're missing. They're missing a receiver with speed. A receiver, because, you had some speed with Sanders, but he was also 31 years old, 32 years old. He didn't put the fear of God into a defense. And I think that's where you need to have somebody who can stretch the field. Because if you are expecting either Taysom Hill or I'm doing terrible. Jameis Winston. I'm doing terrible remembering people's names. The problem is I've been looking at too many draft books, and I got the draft players in my head. But if you're expecting Jameis Winston to push that ball down the field, you're expecting Taysom Hill to push that ball down the field, you're going to need some big targets for him.
Well, you bringing that up, let me ask you this, not to interrupt you, but do you consider that to be a position of need going into this draft?
I do.
Quarterback, I'm talking about.
Oh, quarterback. You know what? I think, it's old timers. You're right. Well, look, my book came in today. Can you see that? My Mike Detillier draft report. It came in today. So I was kind of flipping through this before the show. And I think they do take a quarterback this year. I really do, because they had the story come out that the Saints were kicking the tires on Sam Darnold. You've got Winston and Hill essentially on 1-year deals. Winston's on a prove-it deal. Hill is on a 1-year deal with phantom money on the end, only to give you salary cap space. And I think I've said this since the beginning when we started talking about Drew's life post Drew Brees. For salary cap purposes, you're going to have a cheap quarterback on this roster at some point, because you need that break. I don't think they go for quarterback in the first round. I just don't see it unless something unbelievable happens, which I don't think is going to happen. I think the way teams are shuffling in that top 5 spots, you're likely to see all 5 quarterbacks go in the first 10 picks.
Yeah.
You're probably going to see, like you saw in, 2004, and also in 1971, quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3. It's just the order it goes in. The only quarterbacks I can see sliding now are Trey Lance and Justin Fields. And I can't see them getting out of the top 10. I really don't. I think,
But I'm afraid that if they don't make a move to jump up in the first round and pick a guy. We're just going to get another project. Something that's going to be here a year or two and probably stashed on the practice squad, and we'll never see anything productive out of him.
I don't know if you'll see a guy stashed in a practice squad, but I do think you'll see him be the number 3 quarterback. And I think in this case, you are probably going to see a guy like, well, I'm going to run through some names. It all depends on how the draft falls, too.
Yeah.
I think, I really think that Trey Lance and Justin Fields are probably the 2 guys most likely to slide.
Yeah.
And I think if they fall into the teens, the lower teens, like 17, 18, 19, you'll see a team like the Saints make a move for one of those 2 guys, and that'd be the only way somebody goes in the first round. But I think a day 2 pick, maybe a 4th rounder, would be a guy like Kyle Trask. I don't like Kellen Mond, but I've heard his name associated with the Saints.
He never really did anything to impress me.
No,
in all the games that I've seen him play in, he was at best maybe and I hate this term, but a game manager.
Yeah,
he never did anything that overwhelmed me. I'll put it that way.
Right, exactly. And if
he didn't have a skill set that shone through, like he's got an incredible arm or he's got a good mind, he makes good decisions. I never got that sort of sense watching him play.
Yeah, and I just feel like, a guy like Ian Book, that's probably, or Sam Ellinger, those are the kind of guys you're talking about, that you're probably a late day 3 pick, 7th rounder guy will probably end up in a practice squad that you never ever see as a player. But I think a guy like Kyle Trask is probably the kind of quarterback the Saints would pick in the 3rd round, with the second, 3rd round pick, maybe in the 4th round if they can get up high enough, if they trade up to go get him. Yeah, I have seen this, Donald. That's why I throw Ian Book out there. He's a Sean Payton kind of guy. Ian Book, his biggest problem is he's going to give you the kind of offense you saw from Teddy Bridgewater, the kind of offense you saw from Drew Brees these last couple of years. It's going to be short passes, a horizontal game, not a vertical game. And he will probably run a little bit, a la Taysom Hill, but he doesn't have Taysom Hill's body, that can dish out punishment. And the problem is next year's draft class is going to be even weaker than this year's draft class for quarterbacks, because Mac Jones is considered a top 5 draft pick, and Mac Jones really, in a deeper quarterback draft, is probably a day 2 pick, a 3rd round quarterback, and he's probably going to go in the 1st round.
Well, what you're looking at Mac Jones, and you're seeing basically the same thing that you saw with the guy that I'm drawing a blank, that Chicago picked.
Trubisky.
Trubisky. You're looking at basically the same body of work that Trubisky. Well, with the exception of national championship and what have you.
A much better offense.
Yeah. He started 1 season. Now, are you really going to invest the future of your organization in somebody that's had 12 or 13 starts?
Playing behind.
That takes a lot of cojones.
Playing behind an offensive line and probably has a couple of number 1 picks. Throwing to receivers who are number 1 picks. Handing off to a running back who's a 1st rounder. Even if he doesn't go in the 1st round, he's a 1st round talent. So, I mean, that's Mac Jones, the problem with Mac Jones is we don't know how much of him is Alabama and how much of him is an actual NFL starter.
Yeah.
Some people have called him Alabama's Chad Henne. Some people have called him, another AJ McCarron.
Exactly.
So it would be interesting to see who drafts him and why. Right now, a lot of people feel like he's going to the 49ers.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot.
Yeah, because the 49ers traded up for a quarterback, which is unbelievable. Yeah. But they did. They traded up for a quarterback. So the question becomes, are the Saints drafting a guy for a cheap contract to be a career backup or somebody just take a look at just in case Winston turns out to be the same Jameis Winston we saw in Tampa? With the idea that we'll probably sign a free agent quarterback as well. That's where...
Could be the guy from San Francisco.
Yeah. I mean...
I think that they're holding on to him right now to see how the draft plays out and use him as, just in case it doesn't work out, we still got him. But I don't think that they have faith in him at all anymore.
Oh, the 49ers? No, the 49ers want him gone. He's like Teddy Bridgewater. The 49ers feel like the reason why they've struggled these past 2 years is he's too fragile. He gets hurt too easily. So they need a quarterback. And I think that's why the Mac Jones thing may not happen to the 49ers. He may end up going to a team like Chicago or a team like maybe Carolina. Because I don't think Carolina's finished looking for a quarterback.
Well, I think they're going to try to hitch to Darnold. I really do.
I think they are.
I don't understand it, but yeah, that's what it looks like to me.
They're going to Darnold because they want somebody who can push the ball down the field. They feel Darnold can push the ball down the field. How accurate he is pushing the ball down the field, I don't know.
Well, you have no sample size to look at as far as his NFL career goes.
No,
because I don't think it's fair to him if you look only at his resume in New York. Because that, I'll give you half the word. The Jets in past years have been a cluster.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and that's the problem. You're looking at what he did in New York, and you're looking at this like, okay, that's a team run by incompetence.
Yeah.
So, and you look at the players that we got from the Jets just ourselves.
Yeah.
We got two good linebackers for a franchise that can't draft linebackers. We got two great ones from the Jets, and Jonathan Vilma, and now Demario Davis.
Yes.
Two of the best linebackers this team has had under Sean Payton and certainly under Mickey Loomis. In fact, the best linebackers this team has probably had since the days of Jim Finks and Jim Mora. And everyone feels like if you just get somebody away from the Jets and put them in the hands of a competent coach, you can see how good of a player this guy is. And the Jets' best receiver, not Jets, one of the best receivers the Panthers had this past year, Robbie Anderson, came from the Jets. So why not think that you could do something with Donald, and hook him up with Robbie Anderson? You can see what the Jets were too stupid to figure out how to do.
Well, Darnold, and who was the other one that came out at the same time?
Rosen.
Josh
Rosen. Yeah.
I didn't think either one of those guys were first-round talents. They got their draft status because of their pedigree, and I still feel that way.
And Donald Woods is saying this right here, and I agree. Justin Fields is also too high. Absolutely.
I agree.
I don't trust Ohio State quarterbacks.
No,
You know,
not at all.
They have a worse track record than Alabama quarterbacks in the NFL. And when you look at the Sugar Bowl this past year and you watch Ohio State play, Fields was playing that game like this is the NFL Combine. This is my NFL resume. And he overperformed. He kicked the shit out of a bad team. Yeah, they made the playoffs, but he overperformed. And he was doing that purely to enhance his draft stock.
Yeah.
And the coach was more than willing to do it because they knew they were playing a bullshit team. So they were more than willing to do it. Let him go out there and pump up his resume.
But the bad thing about that is that the people that do this for a living and their income is based on making these decisions see right through that. One game does not a resume make.
But there are stupid teams out there. And
every year teams reach on a quarterback in the first round.
Well, stupid teams, number one, fall in love with workout warriors. The guy who, look at Jamarcus Russell. It's a great example. Jamarcus Russell, instead of looking at his entire career at LSU, they got pictures of him on his knees throwing a football 70 yards out the stadium. And, oh, my God, look at this guy's arm. And they forget whether or not he can play football. What was his name? Mike Malumala. I think the Jets, either the Jets or the Eagles, one of those green teams, drafted him in the first round because he put on a workout tape for the combine. It was unbelievable. Unbelievable. They'd never seen anybody like this before do these things. And he gets to the NFL and they forget to look at his college footage where he struggled to get off blocks. He struggled to make plays. He was slow diagnosing plays, and he was a bust. 1992 draft might have been, let me see something here. It was the 89 draft. Let me make sure. I think that's the one. I'll never forget this. Yes, the 1989 draft. Okay. Four Hall of Famers went in the first 5 picks. Troy Aikman, Barry Sanders, Derek Thomas, Deion Sanders. Only one player wasn't a Hall of Fame player. Guess which player was the guy on the cover of Sports Illustrated? And the hype was, this is the greatest tackle prospect to ever come out in the NFL.
Mandarich.
Yes, the Incredible Bulk cover. Tony Mandarich. And Green Bay took him in the second round, number 2 overall. He was the bust. The other 4 players were all Hall of Famers. And really, there was a few other players who probably will qualify as a Hall of Famer, like Eric Metcalf, taken 13th overall by the Cleveland Browns. My personal favorite defensive lineman that people never talk about, but probably one of the best defensive linemen in Saints history, Wayne Martin, taken 19 overall. Steve Atwater was a Hall of Famer, number 20. Andre Rison went in that draft. Lewis Oliver was a good player. He went in that draft. That's all first-round picks. So, here you have that draft, but all the hype was on Tony Mandarich because he looked the part. You saw him. You saw his body with no shirt on. You saw him, dominate college players. He gets in the NFL. You're looking at his feet like he's got terrible feet. He has a terrible base. He walks,
which is kind of important for a tackle.
Yeah, he walks pigeon-toed. He looks terrible. Sure enough, Tony Mandarich ended up being a bust in that. So that's the funny thing about the draft, at least to me, is how teams just fall in love with the hype of a player.
And also, I think it's worth mentioning that there's a people don't realize just exactly how much goes into a draft pick succeeding or not succeeding. This player has to transition from the college level to the pro level. They've got to have a work ethic. They have to still have a desire to put in the work to play the game. And this player may not make it in this city, but he would in this city. It's the surroundings, it's the
Yeah,
organization. There's just
it's
so
just
much of it that decides that.
well, you take a guy like Jeff George. Okay, we talked about him last week too. Jeff George checks off every box as far as skill, as far as what you look for physically in a quarterback. Problem with him is he has a shitty attitude.
Yeah,
He was a prima donna, and he didn't take ownership or responsibility for how he played. It was always somebody else's fault
yeah.
when things went wrong.
Guys run the wrong routes.
Yeah, quarter coaches calling terrible plays.
Yeah,
That kind of stuff. I don't have enough talent around me. That kind of thing. So I mean, that's the issue. You look at a guy like the bust that we drafted, the last big bust we drafted, Stephon Anthony. He checks off the boxes you were looking for physically as a linebacker. He's fast. He's got good size. He makes good tackles. He wraps up when he tackles. But the problem was he was slow diagnosing plays. He was easily fooled on reverses and things like that. But it just that's how you made a bust. You did not do enough research on it, and they were determined to get a defensive player in there. You lucked out because the 49ers took him right in front of you, but we almost had another one, Reuben Foster.
yeah.
We got Ryan Ramczyk instead. Reuben Foster
I
was
think
on his
I
third
think we
team. Yeah,
we panned out well on that.
yeah.
I
But
didn't think so at the time, but
well, yeah, because you look at your linebacker position, and that's the other thing I wanted to talk about tonight. We named the players, the positions, I should say, where we have needs, and yet we've done a terrible job drafting linebackers. And
yeah,
linebackers a need for us, a big need. And you look at we've only drafted two good linebackers since 1986, which is
wow.
unbelievable to think about. We drafted Mark Fields and we drafted Winfred Tubbs. Those are the only two good linebackers this team has ever drafted since
The best
1986.
the best
Since 19,
linebackers that we've had since the Dome Patrol have all
yeah,
come through free agents and
yep,
trades and what have
and
you.
yep, exactly, and even them we haven't done well. You know,
Yeah,
uh, for
just
every
because
Demario,
we got Demario Davis and Jonathan Vilma, there's been a lot more names on that list that didn't quite reach the
right?
bar.
And for every Demario Davis that you or Jonathan Vilmer you got in with free agency or trades, or trade, you brought in a Will Herring. You brought in, oh shoot, let's go back in time a little bit. And we'll name some of the linebackers this team has had. What was his name? He came from Tulane, number 52. He was at the end of Moore's years. He played a little bit with the Ditka teams. Damn, it'll come to me in a little while. But yeah, he just it's frustrating because of all the positions we've drafted, you would think at some point we could have drafted at least a competent linebacker, especially since it's been, see, Winford Tubbs was 1996, maybe 95. I think Winford Tubbs is 1995 draft pick. Let me make sure, though, because I think he might even be earlier than that. Winford Tubbs was drafted 94. Okay, 94, because Sam Mills left in 95. Winford Tubbs was drafted to replace Sam Mills. You would think that at some point we would have drafted at least one linebacker to kind of at least have somewhat of a career between Mark Fields and Winford Tubbs, somewhere in that range where you got 1 or 2 good years out of them at least. And we never got one. And unfortunately, linebacker is one of the thinner positions in this draft, especially inside linebacker. Let me see. Lindy's, my other draft book here, Lindy's, I think has a grade of inside linebacker. They give it a C, and outside linebacker a B+. But outside linebacker, now you're looking at guys that they can play outside, but they're really more weak side linebackers. Well, you have Demario Davis already. So, you're really looking for a guy who can play inside and the strong side position, because Zach Bond was really a defensive end pass rusher. So he's more of a weak side linebacker, so that's the other funny part about this is where do you go to get this inside linebacker that you really need?
Well, did you see enough progression in Bond this year to make the assumption that he'll move into the starting lineup?
No, I didn't. I really didn't. And that's the unfortunate part, because he just didn't play enough. And I think him not having training camp and the OTAs and trying to learn a new position kind of set him back.
Yeah.
I thought, we talked about this earlier too. I thought Cesar Ruiz struggled because he didn't get that time in training camp and OTAs to really learn the offense. So, I thought he hesitated a few times. So I'm nervous about Bond. I don't know where he's going to fit in this offense. I don't know if he's going to end up being a special teams guy / backup to Demario Davis. Because Demario Davis is 30. So you're eventually going to have to find somebody to replace him. You probably can get another 2 or 3 good years out of him. But, what happens at that point? But you really need somebody who can play that Sam Mike position, because the Saints play so much 4-2-5 defense.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk more about this next week, because that's the week before the draft. Or we could talk about the week of the draft, where the Saints should go at 28. But one of the players a lot of people are talking about linebacker-wise is Xavier Collins from Tulsa. He's one of the highest-ranked linebackers. I'm not even going to attempt to say the Notre Dame linebacker's name, but he is one of the highest ranked. I'm looking at Detillier's thing right now. Outside linebacker. He's got, let's see. I just had that page and I closed it. He's got Micah Parsons as his number 1 pick. As his top linebacker. He's got Xavier Collins down at, I wonder if he's got him moved to the inside, because he should be up higher than this. Yeah, he's got to have him on the inside. Let's see. Oh, they could put him at defensive end.
Well, it's always a concern with a player
he's got him in the inside, number 1 inside linebacker.
there's always a concern when you draft a player from
Yes.
Tulsa.
Yes, Matt. There is, because of the level of talent.
Yeah, the level of competition that they faced. Like, for example, you play in the SEC, you're playing NFL level talent a lot more than if you're, say, playing at Tulsa.
Right. No, I'm not even going to try pronouncing it because I've never heard it. So,
put it up there again. Jeremiah
Owashu
Karamoa.
Karamoa. Yeah. Yeah, that's the closest I'm going to get to it. I've never heard it pronounced. So, yeah, DeMario is 32. That's why I said you probably can get another 2 or 3 good years out of him because he hasn't been injured, and that's a good thing. What happened to Vilma was knee injuries caught up to him. It wasn't age so much. Yeah, the Bills had a great front. Well, the Bills, that's part of how they got to 4 Super Bowls was because of that
Bruce Smith.
Those starting in 1985.
Bad things.
With Bruce Smith, yeah, you started getting those guys, Cornelius Bennett, Darryl Talley. You started getting those guys in there, so you were ready to make a run by 1990.
Yeah.
Yeah, your Notre Dame linebacker is Detillier's 3rd best outside linebacker.
I don't trust drafting Notre Dame players anyway.
Joe Theismann just entered the chat.
Well, I mean, every once in a while you're going to get a Theismann, you're going to get a Montana, you're going to get the guy that went to the Raiders, the tight end, Tim Brown.
It was a receiver. Tim Brown.
Well, he was a tight end at one point. You're going to get those guys every once in a while, but they're few and far between. Who is the last Notre Dame player that was drafted that you could reasonably qualify as a success?
The last one drafted that was a success because, Jerome.
And I don't mean just drafted by us. I mean throughout the draft.
Oh. Now you got me searching because I'm not.
Joe Montana?
No.
Tim Brown.
Yeah, Jerome Bettis was drafted after both those guys. And Bettis.
Well, he was a Hall of Famer.
Now you got me wondering because I'm not a big Golden Domer. Guy used to work with
either.
Huge Notre Dame fan.
I think they're the most delusional fan base and one of the perpetually most overrated teams in college football.
I would agree they're overrated because of who where they come from. Golden Tate, the Saints killer.
He went to Notre Dame?
Yep. Oh yeah, I did know Golden Tate did. Kyle Rudolph. Let's see. I'm just going to pick out some players I know who are Jalen Smith. Though he hasn't proved it yet, he's getting there. He's getting close.
Yeah.
Will Fuller, he was good with the Texans, pretty good. Theo Riddick, that's jury's still out on him. Let's see. The Bears, Cole Kmet, the tight end they keep trying to hype up. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking on here how many Hall of Fame level players. This is just the guys that are Notre Damers in the NFL right now. And look, an ex-Saint in there. Alize Mack is still in there. Chase Claypool had a good year last year with the Steelers.
Yeah, I'll give you that one.
Yeah. So I'm not saying that that's just the Notre Dame players who are there right now.
Yeah.
Who are in the NFL right now. But you got a few. You do have a few. Yeah, here's Matthew naming some. Quentin Nelson, yes, I saw him. Zach Martin, yeah. That's why I said Jalen Smith. He's the Cowboys, so you have to kind of take that with a grain of salt, because anybody with the Cowboys, they get a lot of hype. Yeah, Harrison Smith, yeah, Brady Quinn. I will never forget this. So, how they show Draft Fest going on, and they showed the Dolphins, and this was the infamous year I think of Cam Cameron, and they oh, he dropped off. Where'd he go? All right. Well, I'm gonna tell this story anyway. I felt bad because here, this draft fest for the Miami Dolphins, they got all these people waiting. Then they're watching Brady Quinn slide down the draft, and here he comes to Miami. Miami needs a quarterback, and Brady Quinn is right there, ready to draft, and they announce that they took Ted Ginn Jr., a kick returner. And you see these Miami fans getting ready to stand up and start cheering and going, yeah, Quinn. And this one little kid, he had to have been about 6 or 7 years old. He didn't know. And he heard the name get announced. He didn't know who it was or anything like that because he's a kid. He just knows he's feeding off the crowd. And he jumps up, because everybody else is standing there, and you could just see all the air get sucked out of the room. This poor little kid is jumping up like, yay! And then he looks at his grandmother like, why is nobody else cheering but me? So I felt bad for him, poor kid. But that's just that's how it goes. And I've been in those draft things. I mean, I was in the 1995 draft where Warren Sapp was tumbling. And the Saints are picking, I think, 13 that year. And here he goes. He's coming down. He's coming down. He's coming down. Of course, the Bucks go up and get him. But Saints fans were chanting for one player, and we didn't get him. We got Mark Fields. And you could just feel the air get sucked out of the room. But Mike Tillier gets on the thing real quick. No, that's a good player. That's a good player. Don't worry. He's a good player, and people are like, no, that's not who we were expecting. And the only draft that was worse was the following year with Eddie George sliding down the board, and we take Alex Molden. That's when people walked out. That was probably the worst draft fest the Saints ever had because they were chanting for, yeah, I saw that. Sean just texted me. It dropped me out. I think that's when everybody knew it was over, that this was the end of the Jim Mora years. No, it's Sean. He's gone, so I don't know. Yeah. I'm going to ask him if he can get back in. Can you get back in? Yeah, that was the year that everybody knew it was over for Jim Mora. And looking back, you could kind of understand the thinking behind why they didn't take George, because Mario Bates was like 50 yards or 60 yards away from a 1,000-yard season. So they kind of felt like, hey, he could probably pan out. He could probably get a 1,000-yard rusher. We really need a cornerback. But the Saints really hooked to Tim Biakabatua the whole the whole week of the draft. It was like the Saints are really into Tim Biakabatua. They're really interested in getting the running back from Michigan. The Saints are probably talking about moving up to grab Tim Biakabatua. And, of course, the Panthers take Tim Biakabatua. He blows his knee out, never becomes the great player everybody thought he was. But Eddie George is sliding down the draft, and everybody knew about Eddie George. Eddie George was supposed to be a top 5 pick. He was supposed to be way up there. There's a Iowa State running back, Heisman Trophy winner. This is a guy that's going to be the next big thing. And he gets to the Saints. Saints fans are chanting Eddie, 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 and we get Alex Molden, and all the air was let out of the room. So it was not a good. That was probably the worst draft fest I ever heard. And people will say, "What about Ricky Williams?" I can tell you right now from experience and listening to the crowd on the radio, because I was living in Lafayette at the time. Ricky Williams, as much as people say that was stupid to trade your whole draft away, so it was almost like when we drafted Reggie Bush, almost from the standpoint of the crowd being so into it. And, I can still hear Mike Detillier scream, "That seals the deal." Of course, when the Colts drafted Edgerrin James, that seals the deal. The Saints are drafting, Ricky Williams. They're going to get the pick. They're going to make the trade. And, of course, they did. And the crowd went nuts because you got the kind of player that the Saints fans wanted you to get, a name player. He was supposed to be the next Earl Campbell, all that thing. And you look at, when a team doesn't get that player, how the crowd reacted. Go back to that same draft. The Eagles select Donovan McNabb instead of Ricky Williams. McNabb is up in front of the crowd holding the token jersey. I call it that because it's always that number 1 jersey, not the jersey they're going to actually wear. He's holding up that jersey, and the crowd is booing him. They're booing him because he did not want Donovan McNabb. They wanted Ricky Williams. So it's like, we just had Easter, so I can always say this. It's like Jesus versus Barabbas. People are cheering for Barabbas the whole time because that's the player they think that they should get. I'm going to hell for that comment, but that's whatever. All right. Sean keeps trying to get in. He cannot get in. I have a feeling it's something to do with his internet connection. So we're probably just going to just wrap it up unless y'all want to hear more rambling stories from me. I talk too much on this podcast anyway. So to wrap it all up, here we go. Let's see. The crazy thing, the Saints are set for the next 10 years. They just got to keep hitting on the draft and move good. Yeah. The only thing I'm concerned about, and I'm going to be concerned about this all the way through probably at least the halfway point of the season, if not further. Quarterback, I'm terrified of. I really am, because the level of excellence we had with Drew Brees, and I have zero confidence in Jameis Winston and zero confidence in Taysom Hill as a long-term starter. I know it's not fair because Brees is a Hall of Fame player, probably one of the greatest quarterbacks, not only in the greatest quarterback in Saints history, but probably one of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history. He just is. Anybody who debates that is an idiot. And I'll say that to anybody. Yeah, I know about Tom Brady and all his rings. I know about Aaron Rodgers. I know about Peyton Manning. But just because I'm saying that Brees is one of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history doesn't take away from the Marinos, the Staubachs, the Fran Tarkentons, all the other players who've ever played, Dan Fouts, all these other Hall of Fame players who ever played. Brees is there. It's not just one guy. And that's the thing that people get wrong with the GOAT, and why I hate that term, the GOAT, because you're just one guy, but there are other players who are also the greatest of all time. There are other players who did things better than you did. You may have gotten all the rings and you won all the championships, but you got other players who did things that Tom Brady's never done and will never do. Brees has the consecutive touchdown streak. That's only Johnny Unitas had the record before him. Brees' completion percentage. Try as Brady might. He's not going to get that. He may one day pass up Breeze with the yardage. He's already got the touchdown numbers, but that just means that they are different but great quarterbacks. So anyway, it's that's why I said, Saints fans have had Breeze's consistency and his greatness for 15 seasons. That's almost an entire generation of Saints fans. Put it in perspective, that's 4 years less than the time that John Meekum owned the damn team. Okay? No quarterback has been the starter for the Saints more or a longer time than Drew Brees. That's a lot for people to expect out of a certain position now. So I don't care who's coming behind him. There's going to be a drop-off because you're going to be expecting perfection and you're not going to get it with somebody else who's just not nearly that level of player. So, yeah, I'm very concerned about that. That doesn't mean I want them to trade up to go get a quarterback. That doesn't mean I think that if they draft a quarterback, that's the guy who's going to replace either of those guys. It just means for now, I'm very concerned how that position is going to play out. That's why I think we need to address all the other holes. So the quarterback can be a game manager and doesn't have to be the big play guy right now. Let the rest of the team build up around it. Yes. Anyway, we'll talk about that next time. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about some of the players. I'm trying to get Sean to kind of study a little bit up on some of these other guys. We'll talk about those guys, and then the week of the draft, he and I are going to kind of have our mock draft, who we think the Saints are going to pick and where, and who we think they're going to take at 28th overall. In the meantime, thank you guys for sticking with us. We appreciate you as always. Crazy thing, Sean Payton gets just show people like, yeah, I can see that. If he turns around Jameis Winston and makes Winston, well, here's the thing. Let me say both of them, because I know I can probably hear Anna screaming when I say this. But if he can turn Jameis Winston into the quarterback everybody thought he was going to be when he's number one overall pick, or he can turn Taysom Hill into a legitimate NFL starting quarterback who can carry a team like a franchise quarterback, then you have to put him in as one of the greatest quarterbacks ever. I mean, greatest coaches ever. That it's not all Sean Payton. But I'm worried it's going to be more like what happened to New England this past year, except we'll be a little bit better on defense and offense than what New England was. That we're going to be a team that's going to be struggling to stay at 500 or to win 9 games. That's my fear. So anyway, we'll talk more about that after the draft, because I think the draft right now, that's the key. If we can't turn around the draft, we're not going to be able to do anything, because we have too many holes in this team right now, and we don't really have the money. We don't have the impact players we can sign. So in the meantime, thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you next time Under the Dome. Good night, everybody.